so many other great nonprofits that provide some type of service to veterans. And it may be horseback riding, it may be deep sea fishing, but there's really no pill or vaccine that the VA can prescribe in these guys and women together to share, understand. And, when we get together and we talk about the stories of war, it's not about all the glory and the glamour. And sometimes they really want to put that behind them and just focus in the moment and look to the future on what's possible now that they've been through these things and continue to heal after compartmentalizing all of that trauma on the battlefield. And I think that's the real message we like to push is, what are you doing now? What are you going to do in 2 years? What are you doing in 5 years? What's your plan? And guiding those we serve with to this day. And for me, leading those Marines and those families to this day is something I'm very proud of.
Mm-hmm. You spoke about, there's some vocabulary words that I like and I labeled, and there's 3 of them primarily. And one of them is friction. And you already had mentioned it. So friction is something that, it's a term that you coined. Can you talk a little bit about it? And if it's, there's friction on the battlefield, of course, but what type of friction have you been experiencing outside, especially as an author doing your publishing tour?
Well, I use the word friction as that indescribable pressure that always surrounds you, that you really have no control over. Experience on the battlefield is obviously different than the friction I deal with now. I really don't think about the pressure of writing a book or the pressure of doing a publicity tour, because for me, it's just more hectic than anything, maintaining a schedule and traveling a lot, which I enjoy. And you really just never know who you're going to run into. And there's a lot of times where I'll get invited to attend an event or do a speaking engagement. And sometimes it's totally outside of the military circles, which I find super cool. I never say no to an opportunity. I think that's one of the reasons for my success is always saying yes to these opportunities, because in the back of my head, I might be thinking, oh man, this is really way outside of my purview, or it's an audience I'm not familiar with. But every single time I do that, Robert, I'm blown away by the type of people that I meet, and they engage with me, and I make all these great connections. And there's so many people out there that want to support veterans and want to understand these stories. And when you're able to connect with them and really bridge that gap between what they didn't know as your ordinary everyday civilian to what we do in the military, I think is really powerful. I think that's probably been the best part of all of the added, people that have come into my life. And so I don't know if I'd describe it as friction. I think it's really more of fortune than friction, if I had to pick a word.
Yeah. I wake up, I find myself, especially a lot this last year, people ask me, how I'm doing. And I really embraced the thought that I'm blessed, right? Like I talk about where I'm at. I'm at USC. I'm a vet. I was, addicted to drugs in high school, joined the Marine Corps, got out because of a court martial and didn't know where my life was. And here I am, I'm at USC, being paid for by the VA, and, I've got a book and this podcast. I'm just super blessed. So I get, man, when you said, instead of friction, I look at it as fortune, that hits, that resonates a lot with me, because I wish more people would embrace that level of acceptance. You know what I mean?
Well, it's understanding the circumstances you come from too. Guys like you and me have perspective. Yours is a battle through drugs and, trouble in the Marine Corps, and then rebounding and overcoming adversity. And I think that being able to share the stories, Robert, of overcoming adversity, whether my story was in Echo and Ramadi was obviously overcoming adversity against a well-trained insurgent force, guys who were trying to kill us, that was something to overcome.
Yeah.
But to get where I am today, I feel the same way you do. Like, I look around and I'm having dinner with the National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster at the Nixon Library, and I'm speaking it for 9/11 at these big organizations, and I'm signing a copy of the book for General Mattis, and I think back, who was that screw-up kid in high school from Waukegan, Illinois, that was cutting class, drinking underage, running from the cops, getting caught by the cops, and then enlisted in the Marine Corps. Now, today, I'm surrounded by so many people. And you know what people tell me, because I don't often stop to recognize how fortunate I am. And a lot of people have to remind me, you work hard and good things come. And if you help others along the way, that's where it all comes back to you. And I think that, you know, I always say that I'm a selfish person, and people say, wow, you're the last person in the world I would ever call selfish. I think it's something inside of me that I feel that way. Because I always feel like I have to be doing more. I always have to be giving more. And if I'm not, that makes me categorically a selfish person. Yeah. But most people say, Nick, no, man, you're not. You do all of these things. And it's just something inside of me, I guess. So again, when I reflect back at who I was, all the hard work that I put into it, I think that that's important too. And you're another great example of that, is being able to share the adversity and the journey of overcoming that adversity through hard work and applying yourself, basic tenets of Marine Corps leadership that we learned at an early age, and applying that. Really, you're another case study. The fact that you're in grad school now, you know, working towards your master's degree, that's not something everybody does. I mean, you're something special. So I think it is, being able to share that story is a capacity that a lot of people don't really have. And I'm not saying everybody has to have a podcast. Not everybody has to write a book about their life. Yeah. But being able to share it in some form is tough. But those who do share it, I'm very proud of.
Well, even some of your Marines gone on to become restaurant owners and have gone and put themselves through culinary school or law school. I mean, you guys didn't stop. And that was a good thing to end on as well. Seeing the progression of the growth of the individual that grew up under you. And that's what they did. They grew up under you. You know, I look to my staff NCOs and OICs as parental figures, as well as disciplinarians and, you know, individuals doing their job. But I mean, I don't think until you pull yourself out of it, how much of a parental role, leadership role, mentor role you have until you can look backwards.
That chapter of the book where I give where are they now, I think was really cool. And one of the examples you're talking about is Nick Velez, who's a successful business owner in Downey, California. He's opened a second restaurant called Bastards American Canteen in Temecula, California. And he's also the founder of SaveTheBrave.org. And when he asked me several years ago if I wanted to be the executive director to provide leadership and guidance, I said, absolutely, as long as we do it the right way. And we continue to grow, and we help hundreds of veterans every year. But Nick is such a great example of that. And he was just a young kid, no more than 19 years old, as we fought in Ramadi. And now I look at him, you know, he's getting his degree. He's a successful businessman. And I'm sure he looked at me back then as a 35-year-old captain at the time as his commander, as a father figure, or, you know, a brother, or, you know, whatever they fit the bill. Yeah. But now we're close friends, and, you know, he still calls me sir. I can't break him. He just won't not kick the habit. But, you know, I'm so proud of him and everything he's doing, because he is an example of one, being successful and applying everything you learn in the military, and two, staying connected to those you served with to create this bond, and also being able to give back, because that's what Nick does. And I think that helps sustain him as well. And it certainly does for me. And I'm proud to, you know, still be connected to him. And there's no secret about it. Nick also, I'll throw Nick under the bus a little bit for the list, and they'll love this. Nick will love this. But he and there's a few other Marines will never miss an opportunity to remind me that they got NJP'd, which is a form of punishment. You know, it's nothing serious, but it's serious enough. But when you screw up, and he'll tell the story like, hey, you remember that time that we were on ship and you NJP'd me? I'm like, I may have conducted the NJP, but like, I'm pretty sure I wasn't the one down in the laundry room getting into it with a senior, sailor, chief petty officer, and getting into a verbal altercation, which got you in trouble in the first place.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, that's right. You weren't there with me. So, even through the worst, the tough times and all of that. And trust me, hey, for anyone listening, I'm no choir boy. I was enlisted before I became an officer and got more than my share of trouble. Trust me. So I say that with all love for Nick. And, it's just part of growing up and part of learning and getting through the trouble you get into as a young Marine sometimes. And trust me, I got into more than my share. But, today we're still, such good friends, and I'm so proud of Nick, man. He just is continuing to crush it.
Yeah. Well, segues good into the segues well into the next vocab word that I pulled from the book, and you talk about metrics of success, and can you talk about them in the sense where you break it down as your perspective as a leader? How do you measure success, and are you there yet?
I'm always looking for ways to learn and ways to grow and improve. Nobody likes to use the word change and to say, like, we need to change this, but let's improve this. And I look at that at myself too. How can I do something better? How can I improve my work? How can I improve my writing, my relationships? How can I improve, the charity that I do for others? How can I continue to grow? And the real metric of success, I think, is that mindset of just constantly applying yourself and constantly being a lifelong learner and leveraging those people in your network to help you get there. And I think that's an important thing is for guys in the military who transition out, is that they don't really understand the power of that network that you enjoy most certainly when you're in the Marine Corps. But once you leave, if you allow yourself to go into these other circles like I was talking about, where you feel you have no place and this is the last place I thought I would speak or the last place I thought I would work, once you do that, those circles slowly overlap and they stack up on top of each other, and this network becomes this massive column of support. And when you're willing to do that and extend yourself out, I think that's one measure of success. That's one metric you could use is, how have I built my network? And when you transition from the military, I think a lot of these guys are very afraid. They say that, I'm afraid. I was talking to Tom Foster, who is now a sergeant major. He's in the book. He was my company first sergeant, and I was honored to hear him ask me to be the retiring officer at his retirement ceremony next year. And I said, hey, what are you going to do when you retire, Tom? He says, I'm not sure. I'm just, I'm a little nervous about it. And this is coming from a guy that spent his whole career counseling Marines about what to do when they leave the military. But even at the senior level, I'm often amazed that some people haven't planned for themselves because they're so busy taking care of other people. But understanding that the network that we have, whether it's in a nonprofit or whether it's in an association or the VFW or the American Legion, those are pretty powerful, legitimate organizations to connect with to ensure your success once you transition from the military.
Yeah. Yeah. And you are building that network. I'm telling you, you're all over, like I said earlier, you're all over the place, from coast to coast. I think you even stopped in an overseas base somewhere, right? Am I correct? Are you going overseas too?
No, I haven't been overseas yet, but it's in the works.
Then I stand corrected. But I mean, what? And you had mentioned that you are meeting a lot of.
I just want to say, as you were, just to throw that because this is Vet of the Year.
Thank you, sir.
Old moniker, as you were.
Well, I'm interested in knowing some of the groups that, I mean, like you said, you've met a lot of people, a lot of groups. What groups out there are impressive to you? Who's out there worth mentioning?
One of the great organizations that has really been supportive is the Nixon Foundation.